Which one is right for me, the Sony A6400 or the Sony A6700? Is there a significant difference in image quality between the A6400 and the A6700? Is it worth spending the extra money on the A6700 compared to the A6400? Is the A6700 much better for video? Should I upgrade to the Sony A6700? These are some of the many questions beginners and semi-professionals have when trying to decide between these two cameras. I still receive a surprising amount of questions in my comments about this exact topic, so today I'm going to answer all of those questions and more. For some context, I've owned the A6400 for about 5 years now, and I got the A6700 shortly after its release. I have taken thousands of photos with both of these cameras and shot a ton of video as well, so all the knowledge that I have accumulated over the years about both of these cameras is going to be poured into this video to help you make the right choice. And just before we get started, let me know in the comments if you could tell which camera is which in the following videos. Camera A was the Sony A6400 and Camera B was the Sony A6700. On the surface, the images produced by both cameras look very similar, but internally they are very different. The way each one of these guys handles key aspects of filmmaking and photography can noticeably affect your final results in everyday practice, and the first significant difference between these two cameras is the build quality. At a first glance, you may be led to believe that both of these cameras look very similar, but when you look closely, the A6700's design is much more refined. It features a deeper, more comfortable grip, improved button layout, a better organised menu system, a fully articulating screen, and uses the APS-C battery, which provides extended life and longer shooting times. On the other hand, the A6400 by comparison feels less refined. It still carries that more budget-conscious APS-C design from when Sony was still trying to figure out ergonomics and the overall user experience. The grip is smaller, the buttons are more crammed, and the menus feel a bit clunky. The screen isn't fully articulating either, though it does flip up, which can actually be handy in certain shooting situations. It also uses the older MP-FW50 battery, which has a shorter runtime. The EVFs on both cameras are technically identical in specs, though from extended use I do think Sony has done a little bit of tweaking with the one on the A6700, but I might be wrong about that. It just feels a little bit better. The LCD screen is different and is noticeably improved. The A6700 has a 1.03 million dot display compared to the A6400's 921,600 dot display. It might not sound like a significant difference, but when you're reviewing and monitoring things, it makes life that much easier. Both cameras are weather sealed against the elements, though the A6700 does have improved dust and moisture resistance, but I have had both of these cameras in a heavy rain before and not encountered a single issue myself, but of course your mileage may vary. Out of the two, the A6400 is the lighter camera, weighing 359 grams compared to 409 grams. Some of the A6700's extra weight can be attributed to ergonomical improvements, but also upgraded specs. The A6400 features a 24.2 APS-C XMOR CMOS sensor, whereas the A6700 has a 26 megapixel XMOR R back illuminated CMOS sensor. In practice, the difference between 24 megapixel and 26 megapixel isn't significant, but the sensor type does, especially when it comes to low light performance. The A6700's back illuminated sensor is designed to let more light hit the sensor, which in theory means it's going to be better in low light situations, despite both cameras sharing the same native ISO range of 100 to 32,000 and an expandable range of 50 to 102,400. At ISO 1000, the difference between these cameras is almost impossible to spot. It isn't until around ISO 4000 that you start to notice a slight separation on the surface. They may still look very similar, but once you zoom in, the A6700 image is a bit cleaner with slightly less visible grain. At ISO 8000 and 16000, both cameras naturally get progressively noisier, but the A6700 continues to handle the increase better, maintaining cleaner shadows and less colour noise. And by ISO 32000, the difference becomes much more obvious. The A6700 sensor is able to hold on to more detail in the darker areas, keeping the blacks from washing out, whereas the A6700 starts to lose shadow detail due to the heavier noise. These tests are useful for helping us understand how both of these cameras handle higher ISO, but you've got to ask yourself, realistically, when are you ever going to shoot at ISO 32000? Because for me, that's never. In practical use, the maximum ISO I'd recommend using on the A6400 is 3200 to 4000, and on the A6700 that can slightly be increased to 5000 to 6400. Another spec worth mentioning is the burst shooting. Whilst both cameras are matched at 11 frames per second, where they differ slightly is the A6400 can shoot 42 RAW files before that buffer fills, and on the A6700 that's pushed up to 60. Autofocus is where the gaps between these two cameras really start to show. So the A6400 still has one of the best autofocus systems from its generation. It's the kind of autofocus that made people go, okay, Sony's autofocus is on another level. You get reliable face and eye detection, solid subject tracking, and it still holds up pretty well today. But the A6700 builds on the foundations that the A6400 once built and basically jumps a whole generation. This camera is rocking Sony's AI autofocus, the same focus system found in many of their high-end cameras like the A9 Mark III, which means in use it's not just looking for a face or an eye, it actually understands what the subject is. People, animals, cars, trains, planes, insects, it can recognize and track them far more intelligently. In real-world use, that translates to faster subject acquisition, more confident tracking, especially when subjects move unpredictably, better eye detection at a distance, and far fewer situations where the camera hunts or loses the subject. Honestly, from my experience, nothing comes close to matching what Sony's been able to achieve with their AI autofocus. In-body image stabilization is another area these cameras differ. The A6400 doesn't offer any, which for photography is fine. People managed for over 100 years without it, but for video, that's a different story. If you're shooting video handheld without stabilization, your footage is going to look shaky, jarring, and probably unusable. If we take a look at this clip here, this is being shot at handheld at about 35mm with IBIS turned on. The footage is smooth and very usable, but as soon as we turn off the IBIS, you can immediately see all the jitters and micro movements stacking together. Your only solution here really is relying on your lens stabilization if you have it, or a gimbal. The A6700 does offer 5 axis of in-body stabilization, and this was one of the most welcome upgrades when we got this camera. It helps out smooth out any micro jitters when you're filming video, and for photography it does have some benefits. It means you can shoot at a slower shutter speed and still achieve sharp results. And if you need a bit more of a boost in camera, you also have active stabilization available. So if you're shooting handheld often, the A6700 IBIS is going to be one of those upgrades you feel immediately. Now let's talk about video specs, and this is where the A6700 really starts to pull ahead. The A6400 shoots 4K up to 30 FPS. It can also shoot 1080 up to 120, and that's not bad for a camera from 2019. But the specs in the A6700 quite literally rival some of Sony's full frame cameras like the A7C Mark II that I'm currently filming on, and I would actually argue beats it. You get 4K 60 FPS without a crop, which is something you don't get with the A7C Mark II or something like the A7 IV. It also shoots 4K 120 FPS in a 1.25 times crop, so you get buttery smooth slow motion footage straight out of camera in 4K, and if you want ultra slow motion, it can even go up to 240 FPS in 1080p. Another huge upgrade is color depth. The A6700 shoots internally 10-bit 422, which essentially means it records more colors and smoother gradients between them. Practically, this gives you more flexibility in post-production for things like color grading or color exposure. You can push the colors, recover shadows, and tweak the highlights without introducing banding or nasty artifacts. The A6400 by comparison only has an 8-bit 420 sensor, which is still fine. You can do some really amazing color grading with it, but you do have to be a little bit more careful with the footage as it's a little bit more fragile. This is because 8-bit stores fewer color shades and compresses the color information more aggressively, so extreme adjustments can create banding or uneven gradients. In other words, there's less wiggle room to fix or stylize your footage in post. Another feature that I almost forgot to mention that I love with the A6700 and I couldn't live without it is the ability to import LUTs. This lets you preview what your final image will look like in camera before you even start editing. It's super convenient for monitoring footage instead of staring at that grey washed out S-Log footage. So if you want the most professional looking video and the most amount of flexibility in post to color grade your footage, you're going to honestly want to look at the A6700. When it comes to photography and image quality, this is where things actually start to even out. In truth, image quality has reached a point where there's not much more manufacturers can push. Instead, camera brands are focusing on features that make the whole shooting process smoother. Things like ergonomics, EVF, LCD screens, and of course, autofocus. For me, I know I can take equally good photos with either camera, and over the years of owning both, I've been able to do just that. Honestly, in today's world, you can get great shots with almost any modern camera. What really makes the difference is how well you understand your gear and your skills as a photographer. If photography is going to be your main goal and video is not even on your radar, then the A6400 starts to look even more appealing, especially when you factor in price. Right now, the A6700 retails for around $850, whilst the A6700 is closer to $1,500, $650 more. With the money you save buying the A6400, you can now invest into the really important stuff. Lenses. In fact, for a little over the price of the A6700's body, you could get the A6400 along with a Sigma 18-50 f2.8 and Viltrox 56mm f1.7. Straight out the gate, you've got lenses that will help you learn the fundamentals of photography and give you a more future-proof setup. So out of these two cameras, which one should you choose? If you need a hybrid camera for both stills and video, or just a camera for video, out of the two, you want to go with the A6700. I can't fault anything about this camera. I think Sony's only mistake with the A6700 was they made it too good for their own good. However, if you don't have the budget for an A6400 or video's not even on your list of needs and you don't need the extra stuff that the A6700 offers, you just need something to start out, then the A6400 is a brilliant option. It's a camera that's still worth it, and the benefit of buying this camera over the A6700 is you can invest that money into those all-important lenses. So that's my comparison between the A6700 and the A6400. Out of the two, which one would you choose? Let me know in the comment section below. If I have missed anything or you've got any further questions, let me know in the comments below. I will try and get back to you. And if this video was helpful and you did enjoy it, hit the like button and subscribe. We are on the road to 100k subscribers, so any additional support would be deeply appreciated. Now, just before you go, if you'd like to see a setup guide on how I've set up the A6400, then check out this top video right here. Alternatively, if you'd like to see how I've set up the A6700, then check out this bottom video right here. And with all that said and done, until next time, create, explore, and inspire.